With Auburn falling to Tennessee in the semifinal of the SEC Conference Tournament, how far can Auburn go in the NCAA Tournament? We will discuss that in the Weekend Tailgate.
This is the Weekend Tailgate, brought to you by Golden's Cast Iron. C-Dub, Ike Jones, Be Will, Mike G. You are now listening to
the Weekend Tailgates, brought to you by the good folks at Golden's Cast Iron. Whether you work out, grill out, or chill out, they got something for you. Use code Get Your Weight Up for 15% off of weights. Code TWR for $65 off of fire pits and Kamado grills. It's about to be that season for the grilling. It's about to be that season. Listen, January should have been when you started getting your summer body ready. Now, if you're like me, then you've been cultivating a dad bod. And you've been doing that for 12 months, and it's going to persist to be that way. But some of y'all really want to get in there and work out. You could do that at the crib. Golden's Cast Iron's got the products for you. We want you guys to support them and support us by joining the War Rapport. $5.99 gets you to that patron level. And today, you know what, Caesar, we didn't discuss this before. I'm going to ask you what you think right now live. I'm doing a watch party for the reveal of the bracket later on today. Should I open that up to everybody, or should I keep that green name gang only?
I think you should open it up to everybody, but green name gang should only be able to comment.
Tough. Okay. All right. So we're going to do that later on today. We will have a bracket reveal live watch party. So you guys make sure you jump back on here with that. If you are not a member, maybe a member gift you a membership. You get a free month of membership on them, and you can join in on all the festivities that the membership perks get you. And then you decide, hey, I kind of like this. Maybe you want to continue to support us in that way. You can support yourself maybe and make a little money by going to BetUS TV, and they will have all the odds for all of the markets that are out there for different ways that you can place a little money on all of the games, not just Auburn's games, not just college basketball, any games that you want to, baseball, NBA, they got all the stuff, but you can get all of the details for all of the odds that are available over at betustv.com, and they can hook you up over there with all the information that you need. Also, if you want to be able to do a little something for projections that are out there for each of the games that are coming up, you can go over to Underdog Fantasy. Fantasy projections are out there. New customers use code RAPPORT. You get to up to $1,000 in bonus cash on your first deposit over there. So make sure you let them know the folks at the War Report sent you in that way as well.
Ike joins us. Ike, you were there covering the game.
Yes, indeed.
Jumped on live during the halftime, during the office hours watch party with Dustin. Shout out to him for holding it down while you were away in Nashville. Haven't had a chance to hear your thoughts on the game. Obviously, it was a disappointing end. Auburn got down big late in the second half, but was able to close the gap and looked like they had an opportunity to actually get the dub at the end, but Tennessee was too much for Auburn at the end. Your thoughts on what you saw in Nashville in the semifinal round with Auburn?
Yeah, I mean, I talked about this when I went on live with Dustin at half, and he was like, what does Auburn need to do to get across the finish line? Auburn was winning that game by 1 point at the half, and I was like, they have to not get in foul trouble and put Tennessee in the bonus early. Like, that was literally what I said. I was like, hey, they can't go out there and foul and put Tennessee in the bonus early, because I think that that's going to be bad for Auburn. And I'd be doggone if that ain't exactly what they went out there and did. They fouled a bunch. Tennessee was in the bonus. And the free throw line is really where Tennessee won this basketball game and where Auburn lost it ultimately, is not being able to convert at the free throw line. And then the other portion of it is the outside shooting when Auburn needed it the most in this game just wasn't there, right? It just the passing wasn't crisp. There was one situation where Miles Kelly was coming off of a curl action and he fumbled the pass when he caught it. It wasn't the greatest pass, but he fumbled it. And so he didn't get a clean look off. So he ended up kicking it to Denver Jones and he missed the shot that he had. But then Auburn gets the rebound and you're like, Chad Baker-Mazara. Yeah. And then Chad Baker-Mazara misses his opportunity there. So Auburn had chances to be able to tie that game up late when they really needed big shots. And it was just the execution was not crisp offensively in either of the games. And in the Tennessee game, it was better, because Tennessee was allowing, and Coach Barnes talked about this actually in his post game. He was saying, we felt comfortable kind of just playing straight up against Janai Broome. They didn't want to double a bunch, but Janai was busting them upside the head. Like he really was
down the stretch.
They doubled him the minute he touched. Like that had been the strategy for the teams that had beat Auburn. Like Alabama didn't really do a bunch of doubling, but like when you look at the Florida game, you look at the Texas A&M game, you look at the Duke. Well, Duke was playing him one-on-one, but Tennessee, Kentucky, where he struggled, they were doubling him. Like the minute he touched the basketball, they was like, nope, and get the ball out of his hands immediately. Tennessee was like, nah, we're good. We're just gonna play it straight up. Yeah, that didn't work out so well. Janai was killing him, so they had to start doubling him again. The only difference in this situation was, again, that when he passed out of that double team, that there weren't guys knocking down open shots like they had been earlier in the season. So, a couple of guys really struggled with their productivity in that game, and we'll talk, I guess, a little bit more about that. But Cheney Johnson, he hasn't been the mid-range assassin that he had been when he was doing his best. And then you get Tahaad Pettiford, who couldn't buy a basket. Even he smoked the layup, and I was just like, "Oh my goodness, who is this guy?" Because he's a tough two maker, and he absolutely missed the layup there. That really was the story of the game for me.
There was some bad fouls too on the part of Auburn in the second half, and I'm like, guys, what are you doing? I saw Chris Moore with a few bad fouls. Effort plays, but it's like that how Auburn beat Tennessee last game was Auburn shot the ball. They had more field goal attempts than Tennessee.
Mm-hmm.
And you have more field goal attempts. The likelihood of you having more makes is what's going to get you over the edge. What neutralizes that is what you pointed out, fouls, sending Tennessee to the line. And Tennessee shot well from the line. Auburn didn't. And to me, to your point, that's what really spelled doom for Auburn. Let's talk about Auburn's perimeter play. It was a quiet day from those. For the most part, it was a quiet day from a few guys. Denver Jones didn't really shoot all that well from the field, but he was able to get to the line. Right, yeah. He was able to get to the line. Shot 7 of 8 from the free throw line.
That one he missed was so important, though.
Yeah, it was because I think it made the difference between a 2-possession and 1-possession, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah. So he missed a critical one down the stretch. I think that was his last attempt, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, it was his last attempt. So Miles Kelly, 5 of 11, field goal shooting, 13 points. It seemed like a quiet game from Chad Baker-Mazara. Kind of your thoughts about Chad in this game?
I think I liked what Chad was attempting to do. He wasn't just doing the whole dribble, step back, fire it away from 3. He was actually attempting to get downhill. And I think that was really a thing that they talked about. When you go back and look at this game, it looked as if the strategy for Auburn was, we're going to get downhill versus Tennessee and try to force the action in the lane, force these refs to give us some of these foul calls. They just weren't getting them as consistently as Tennessee was. But Chad was trying to get into the lane a little bit more, trying to be more of a facilitator. I think he's trying to round himself into that role as the secondary point guard now a little bit as they move into the tournament. And you can see him when he got the ball, he was looking to get the ball to Janai. Like they were determined, we're going to ride Janai Broome to this victory today. Chad, sometimes you'll see him earlier in the season in that when he's on that wing ISO and Janai's down there in the post, he'll still fire up a shot over the top, or he'll try to drive and use Janai as a screen to get to the lane. He was immediately throwing the ball in the post to Janai and then clearing out. Like they were determined Janai Broome's going to be the guy that's going to take us there. And Janai did his part. Now, he missed a couple of stuff around the rim, but for the most part, he was doing the work in the paint. And he didn't force up a bunch of bad threes in this game. This was the way that this offense needs to look. You just didn't have the outside shooting to complement him the way he needed to in this game.
And I guess that's something that we can get to and talk about. You pointed it out earlier with Cheney Johnson mid-range, but Tahaad Pettiford, who was 0 for from the field, he struggled mightily. Even I believe he tweeted out something acknowledging that he was going to be better in this game, but he's been kind of struggling a bit from the field. Kind of talk about him and how critical, because what I pointed out in the post game, Mike, is Tennessee's bench scored 25 points. Auburn's bench only scored 3.
Right.
And in a game like this, you cannot afford to have just 3 points coming off the bench, which means Tahaad and Cheney has to give Auburn more than what they gave them in this game.
Yeah. Tahaad struggled, and I talked about this a little bit with Mike, who, of course, he was there at the tournament with me, as well as the guy who does photography for us, and one of the, if anybody knows Brandy Mack from Twitter. We talked about this a little bit after the game. I think what's happened to Tahaad most recently is that they're rounding him into that point guard role, and they've taken him off the off-ball role a lot more. Like when you saw Tahaad playing so well and scoring so well early in the season, people forget JP Pegues was the other point guard during that portion of the season, right? Yeah. And Tahaad was allowed to come off of the ball a little bit more, and his role was to score. And this is a very similar place that Denver Jones was in early in his Auburn career, is trying to figure out how to pick your spots to be a scorer and still be effective as a point guard and run the team. And Tahaad has not really found himself as the point guard scorer in very many games. Well, he did pretty good versus Kentucky. Well, not pretty good. He did really good versus Kentucky in doing that. But you'll notice a lot of that's not really like called plays for Tahaad. It's really just him going and getting the shot. And those shots weren't falling for him. But earlier in the season, when he was the off guard, they were calling plays for Tahaad to go and get a shot for him. And they haven't done that a lot recently. And so I think that's contributed a little bit to the fact that he's just having to go and create shots, as opposed to, hey, this one's drawn up for you, Tahaad. We want you to shoot it in this instance. And so he's having to, force up some shots that maybe aren't the best shots in certain situations. I think the only other issue for me with what Tahaad does on certain possessions is he's like, all right, man, it's my turn to go get a bucket, and nobody else will touch the ball during that possession. It'll be dribble, call for a screen, step back shot. And it's like, we didn't work any offense on that possession. And I don't know if that was the best time to 10 seconds into the shot clock to put up a 3, right? Even as confident a shooter as he is. So, I think that if Tahaad can find his shot early, then okay, let's go back to that. If not, let's be a little bit more patient in the offense.
Yeah. Your thoughts on Cheney Johnson and what's been going on with him? Because I think we're 2 to 3 weeks of a very mild Cheney Johnson in games. Because at one point, it looked like Auburn still had a low post presence, even with Janai on the bench, because Cheney Johnson he came on strong. I think it was the game against Ole Miss where he was just giving them work, I believe. Just
Vanderbilt, he killed him.
Vanderbilt, yeah. It seemed as though Auburn had a two-headed monster in terms of being able to score in the paint with those two guys. And it seems like that has all but evaporated as of late.
Yeah, I don't even know how to explain it, because he had some good looks versus Tennessee that he was normally making, even when he wasn't doing like the Vanderbilt take over the game, whatever, how many points it was in a row, like 9 points. I forgot what the run it went on in that Vandy game. Even when he wasn't doing that, he was making that little mid-range floater, mid-range fadeaway, but he hasn't found that in a minute, and I don't know what to explain. But he shot the three okay, right? He hit a three in both games when he stepped out and shot him. But the stuff in the lane that you really need him to be there for, when he's getting those boards and get back up really quickly and throw a little floater in, he hasn't been able to knock that down for some reason. And I don't even know what to attribute that to, because it's not it doesn't seem as if he is fumbling with it. It doesn't seem like he just hadn't found the touch lately. And so hopefully that's going to be a major focus for Cheney over the next week. It's just like, I need to get that rhythm back and figure out what's going on with this mid-range, because if he does that, to your point, when Janai goes off of the floor, which what happened versus Tennessee, when Janai went off of the floor, the offense just didn't really have a centralized thing that they could do. They couldn't just give it to Cheney and say, all right, now you go to work in the post and we'll play through you. Even though Cheney's not as good a passer as Janai, I think he is an effective mid-range shooter. And so it allows them to still run some of the same stuff. But again, I don't know what to attribute it to. He just hasn't looked good there in the interior. And then he's had some foul trouble issues, which have kept him off of the floor. But yeah, that wasn't the issue in Tennessee. Like it was almost to the point where they're like, well, we just can't play Cheney a bunch of minutes in the second half here because he's not giving us what we need to get from him on the offensive side.
I think the thing here is that Auburn actually, and we can talk about this when we get into the second half of the show, when we forecast what Auburn will likely do in the tournament. Auburn has played some really tough teams, basically all regular season. But over the past few weeks, you played Tennessee, you played Bama, you played A&M. Again, you some tough matchups for Auburn. It's likely Auburn won't face a team like this again until perhaps maybe the Sweet 16 at the earliest, assuming Auburn takes care of business in each of the rounds.
Mm-hmm.
But your thoughts about how this Auburn team has handled themselves in this tournament? Did you see what you needed to see from Auburn in the SEC tournament?
I did, actually. I saw exactly what I needed to see. First game versus a hungry Ole Miss team. You found a way to just win that game. It wasn't pretty, right? Now, there's still some unanswered questions, right? So I'm not saying that, I'm on the national championship train, Auburn is the best team in the country space. But I am saying that they didn't walk into this tournament and just say, all right, well, whatever, and mail in a performance versus either of these teams. It wasn't pretty versus Ole Miss, but they got the win. And they got the win with the National Player of the Year being dominant. And that's what I wanted to see from Janai Broome, a focus on, I am going to will a team to victory because, look, guys, just hop on my shoulders. We'll get there. And that's what they did versus Ole Miss. Yeah. And then he follows that up with another good performance versus Tennessee. And you saw a team versus a very good defensive team claw their way back into a game where it looked like they were dead in the water in the second half. Tennessee had built up I think it had gotten up to like 12 points at one point in time in that game. 12. And Auburn fought their way back. They showed a resilience in that game as well versus a good team. I think people are forgetting Tennessee's actually a good team, right? And so you didn't lose to some scrub team. You lost to a good quality team that you barely beat the first time you played them. But I loved the resilience that you get from Auburn. Now, again, that doesn't mean that Auburn doesn't still have things that they absolutely need to work on, and we can critique it to the high heavens. But I love the fight that I saw from them in that Tennessee game, and hopefully the sting of that loss, plus them seeing themselves wake up and be able to close the gap on a really good team, fuels them to say, guys, we've got what we need. Let's just go out here and handle business.
Overall, Auburn is a pretty good free throw shooting team. Like when you think about the guys who you can depend on to sink a free throw, from Denver Jones to Chad Baker-Mazara to Miles Kelly, even to Tahaad Pettiford at times, it seems as though Janai free throw shooting kind of comes and goes.
It does.
There's times where he's good, but then there's times it's just really bad at times. Yeah. And when we needed a free throw, you can almost say this about the Bama game as well. When you needed a free throw, you just couldn't get it from him. And is that a concern going into the tournament where obviously he's your best player? He's going to be on the floor late in games. Is he the guy that the opposing teams are going to attempt to send to the line?
If I was an opposing team, I absolutely would, and I think that is the kind of the nature of the beast with Janai Broome being your best player. And listen, this is not like a new phenomenon out here
Sure.
that a big man doesn't shoot free throws well. Like people act as if Janai Broome is the first guy over 6'8" that doesn't shoot free throws well. This has been in existence since basketball was basketball. And still exist right now in the NBA today. Some of the best big men in basketball don't shoot free throws well. That's just but not a lot of those big men that don't shoot free throws well give you the offense that Janai Broome gives you away from the free throw line, right? Sure. And so, like, I don't know that I really understand the overreaction to it, as if like Janai ain't trying hard enough. It's like, bro, like free throws aren't easy for big men. I mean, that to me is a little confounding. I'm just like, what are we talking about here? Like a big man who doesn't shoot free throws well. Welcome to basketball. It's not unusual. That doesn't excuse it, but I just don't know why people are surprised by it or act as if this is some phenomenon. Like Janai Broome's the only person who can't shoot free. Like, what are we like? Stop.
And let's be clear. This is what the only flaw in his game, if you want to nitpick his game, is like, he could shoot free throws better. Like, shoot threes a little bit better. But again, everything else he does very well, to the point where he is easily Auburn's best player on the court. This is just one aspect of his game that, hey, it could be better. It is what it is at this point.
Yeah. But again, Janai needs to figure out how to be more consistent there for sure. But I think that this is another portion of, like, when we know it's going to become a free throw thing as a team, let's make sure we're putting the ball in the hands of guys who shoot free throws well, and hope the refs are giving you the whistle that you're supposed to get, right? Like, that's why Chad Baker-Mazara, I think, needs to be on the floor as a closer for Auburn. He shoots free throws really well, and he knows how to draw fouls. That's why Denver Jones needs to be on the floor late for Auburn. Shoots free throws well, can draw fouls if they're calling it right. You would have said that about Tahaad Pettiford. Now, Tahaad Pettiford doesn't really get a favorable whistle, and he has been a little shaky on his free throws of late, but he does have a healthy free throw percentage, and when he is not afraid of moments. So Auburn needs to get their guards the ball, I think, a little bit more late game, as opposed to going to Janai, because that opens that door a little bit too much, in my opinion. But yeah, I think it's got to be a concern with, like, okay, our best player, not a great free throw shooter, but we need him to be out here and be involved and go get us buckets. So Janai knows this, and I guarantee you, like, I see people say stuff a lot about, like, effort and desire and all. It's like, I don't think that that's an issue for this team, of like effort and desire. Like, they want to, they've come up short, right? And because they're not a flawless team. But guess what? There's not a flawless team in this tournament, which is why, yes, Auburn can get beat, and yes, Auburn can beat just about anybody.
Florida's about the closest. I mean, they look strong right now.
They do look strong. The thing is that I have not seen from Florida is, like, Florida's built actually the exact opposite of Auburn in terms of how they get points, though, right? Ruben Chinyulu's not a good free throw shooter. Alex Condon's just an okay free throw shooter. Like, their bigs aren't great free throw shooters, but their bigs aren't really going to the line late often in games, because they're not the central focus of how Florida gets points. Florida's more guard driven in their offense. And so you're going to end up getting the better free throw shooters at the line most often in those situations, because they run through their guards a little bit more than Auburn does this year. So, yeah, Florida actually has the same issue that Auburn has, but as far as bigs not being able to shoot free throws well, like, go and look at the percentages. I'm not just making stuff up, right? But they're not big driven, right? So they have a better probability of someone who shoots free throws well with the ball in their hands late in the game.
Yeah. Any other thoughts, man, on this game? Well, as we put a button on it, we can get to some of the comments, because some of you guys have some comments. But any final thoughts on what you saw in this game?
No, I mean, listen, I said overall, I like what I saw from this Auburn team. You know, there are some things. Here's the thing. They did enough that I think it gives them confidence that they can go into this tournament and still win it. But they had enough flaws that the coach can go in and say, hey, guys, we're not perfect, and light a fire under them. So you did enough, I think, because quite the opposite of last year. I think they went into the NCAA tournament last year overconfident. And they were like, we're the best team ever. Nobody's stopping us. We're about to go in here, win 6 straight, mop up the whole. This year, I think they got a little healthy bit of, all right, guys, we got to go out here and handle bit. Like it's enough of that to make them go into here fully aware that we need to play good ball.
Let's get to some of your comments. Big Gap gifted 5 Warport memberships. Thank you, Big Gap. Stephen Keel says Duke is the best team in college basketball. Auburn is at peak. They have no way to get better. They are what they are.
Yeah, I disagree with almost everything in that statement. Like literally almost everything. Florida's
I think Florida's the best team in college, but like it's not even a book session. I'm looking at what Florida is doing and what they've done up to this point. You can't say that.
Duke,
the best team in college basketball is in the SEC, and it looks like it's Duke as Florida.
Yeah, the Duke plays in a weak conference, and Auburn definitely is not peaked. They absolutely can get better at, like, they can shoot the three way better. Like people have said this a lot recently as well. Auburn peaked too soon. And I always retort with this. When was Auburn's peak? When in the season was Auburn's peak? And nobody really has a good answer for that question. So I will ask anybody who feels like Auburn peaked too soon. When would you say this was the best Auburn? And I guarantee you that answer will come before Auburn beat the brakes off of Ole Miss and beat the brakes off of Kentucky. And they looked amazing in both of those games. So they peaked, but then played really well post their peak. Like I think we're being a little too recency, like the recency of losing games makes you feel like, oh, they're moving in the wrong direction. They didn't shoot. Again, they lost to Texas A&M because of reboundings. They shot the ball really well in that Texas A&M game overall. Miles Kelly had a horrible game, but go look at the percentages of what they shot in that game. That's about what you want to be able to shoot against a really good defensive team in Texas A&M.
A&M shot uncharacteristically well.
That's what like. I want people to take a breath and I get it. Auburn lost the game, but some of the reasons why you're that's not Auburn peaking too soon. They've always been a bad rebounding team. Always, the entire season, they've had an issue with rebounding. So they had an issue with rebounding against the best rebounding team in the country. Yes, that's not peaking too soon. That's what you should have expected to happen. Against Alabama, scored 90 points in that game.
Yeah,
that's not peaking too soon. They beat the brakes off of Kentucky. The absolute beat the brakes off of them in their crib. Lost to a really good Tennessee team that normally doesn't give up as many points as Auburn put on Tennessee. Now, they couldn't stop Tennessee as well as what they should have been able to, but that's not peaking too soon, bro. Again, if you're saying, well, they won more games early, and this is something Joe Lunardi said, and we'll get into the bracketology. If Auburn had the exact same record right now and the 3 losses that they had came in the middle of the season, nobody would be talking about this. They could have lost those games in the exact same way. The Auburn team would have the exact same flaws that they do right now. It's when they played the best rebounding team in the country in Texas A&M after they had already clinched the SEC regular season title. On their senior night, Texas A&M shot the ball uncharacteristic. They never shoot threes that well. And all of a sudden they
the stars aligned in that game.
Yeah, I'm not saying that this Auburn team is a juggernaut right now. I'm saying the stuff that people say. I'd ask the question, when was the Auburn peak, and then we can have the conversation about them peaking too soon. Because last year they was running through everybody and sandblasted everybody into the tournament and still lost in the first game.
Yeah.
So,
there's a comment about that as well that someone mentioned. So let's get to some more comments real quick. Lisa Wise, appreciate the super chat, says refs were not the reason we lost, but I am really looking forward to leaving their inconsistency, ineptness, and tendency to favor certain teams behind.
Yeah, I wouldn't say the refs are the reason that Auburn lost that game. I didn't love the way the game was officiated, but hopefully, the whistle will be more even. But tournament time, they seem to swallow the whistle a little bit, which might favor Auburn in the way that they play it.
I think so. I think it'll help us out. You won't see us getting into the bonus as early as we did against Tennessee. At least that's the hope.
Yeah.
Mercy with the super chat says, I hope this loss gives the team a wake up call similar to Ohio State when they lost to Michigan. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think that all of this has been I don't necessarily say a wake up call. I do think that once they clinched, they relaxed a little bit, and now they need to turn it back up and turn it back on. And again, I saw them turn it on versus Tennessee late to close that game. And they just didn't get over the hump. And I think, again, the free throw line deficit that you put yourself in is really the reason, not because they didn't play well enough out on the floor.
Ejit says, how did Miles get called for a double tech?
Literally have no idea. The last two double foul calls that have been involved in Auburn games have been probably the weakest officiating that I've seen, where it's like, it's clear one person escalated. Like the first one was the situation versus Georgia. And I was like, how is Auburn, like, y'all gave 4 techs on this play when clearly it was involving 2 people, and one person clearly initiated, then escalated this entire situation. But somehow y'all had to like wimp out and give everybody like that was terrible to me. And that I didn't like that one in this Tennessee game, because I'm just like, what did the Auburn player actually do to deserve this? Not anything. Like, that entire thing was initiated and escalated by Ziegler. I was just like, yo, come on, bro. That's weak. That's super weak.
Yeah. Lawrence Robinson says, I don't mind Tahaad scoring struggles as much if his assist numbers are still there. You really only need 4 to 8 points from him, but really need the 4 to 5 assists. Thoughts on that?
Yeah, he's got to do one of the, like, preferably both. But yes, the thing that was making Tahaad's play, I think, good from a point guard perspective was he was still giving you the assists. He didn't give you either in that Tennessee game, right? Like, he had high assist numbers, low turnover numbers before that, but wasn't shooting the ball well. Like, he can't be struggling in both of those aspects. You need to either be an initiator of offense or a guy that's going to score points, or be both.
Good conversation. Listen, we're going to come back, talk about Auburn in the tournament in a few hours. Ike's going to be live as we begin to watch and determine where Auburn will be, seeding, who Auburn expects to face first round, so on and so forth. Before we get into that conversation, guys, we want you to like this video. Please share, subscribe if you haven't already. We're going to take a break and come back and discuss the rest.
This edition of the War Report is brought to you by our generous sponsors. The Opelika Rage Room in Opelika, Alabama. The Rage Room is a place where anger and stress find their ultimate release. Call or text 334-777-6688 to set up a session today, or check them out online at opelikaRageroom.com. Golden's Cast Iron. Whether you work out, grill out, or chill out, you deserve the best life possible, and Golden's Cast Iron is here to provide the tools to help you do it. Check them out at goldenscastiron.com.
Thank you to the sponsors of the War Report. Thank you to those of you who are part of Green Name Gang. If you are gang, then we're going to be doing this whole watch party for the bracket reveal later on today. So make sure you pop back in. Ziegler, I'm reading somebody's comment saying Ziegler. Caesar is what I meant to say. Says that we don't open it up to everybody, but Green Name Gang's the only people who can make comments during the live chat. We might do that for y'all this time, just to give some perks to the folks that are Green Name Gang, man, because y'all my peoples, you know what I mean? But if you want to gift a membership and you are Green Name Gang, you can do that right now, and somebody can get a free month's membership on you. If you are going through all kinds of anxiety right now because Auburn is not the juggernaut that you thought they were going to be, and you've lost hope that they can even make it to the Sweet 16, go to the Rogue Shop, rogueshop.com. Use code RAPPORT. Sleep. Some of y'all need a little sleep. Stress relief is absolutely something that needs to happen. Anxiety. If you have a problem with your anxiety, Rogue Shop has a remedy for all of those things for you. Maybe even pain relief. I don't know. Maybe physically feel ill or pain when you're watching Auburn basketball. Go to the Rogue Shop, rogueshop.com. Use code REPORT when you do that.
Bruce Pearl was asked post-game about panic with this team, and he had some interesting comments about that. Go ahead and roll that for us, for those who haven't heard Bruce Pearl's response.
And I had the same question. 3 of the last 4. Is this kind of a flush it, move forward? Is there panic at all? What do you look at with this?
Man, I'm really glad you asked me that question. We lost to Alabama, Tennessee, and at Texas A&M. Yeah, we're panicked. That's a real softball. We lost to some great teams. We lost at the buzzer against Alabama. We had possessions here, so yeah, we're panicked. I can hardly wait till next weekend and start playing again. Just get me here. Let's get to Sunday. Let's find out where we're going. Let's find out who we're playing, and let's get back to work. I'm looking forward, not back.
Ike, that looks like a person who's ready to work, as he said.
So I was in the room when this happened, and I'm sitting right next to the guy who asked this question. I was sitting right next to him, and the shade of red that his face turned while Coach Pearl was answering the question, as he basically was like, "This is a stupid question, but thank you for asking me so I have an opportunity to put this narrative to bed on camera," I laugh at it every single time I watch this, because again, I was there. I was literally right there next to the dude as he asked the question, watching Coach Pearl's face as he asked it and starts a response. And in the middle of it, where he like paused and he gave this very like dismissive, like it's almost like he wanted to be like, "This is stupid. This is a dumb question, but I'm going to answer it because you asked me, because you asked Janai earlier." Now, he phrased it differently when he asked Janai. If you go back and watch the full press conference, which is up on the channel, when he asked Janai the question, he was like, "Is basically what is your message to the team after having lost these games at the end of the season, and how do you turn it around?" And he threw in the little part about is it time to panic when he asked Coach Pearl the question. And yeah, we were chuckling in the back of the room like, wow, he's really like he's really giving it to you right now on this one, buddy. But what I love about it was the end where he was like, "I can't wait. Let's get to Selection Sunday and let us see who we're playing. I can't wait."
Bruce called this, actually. Like, he knew he had a good team this year, but he also said Auburn is going to lose some games, plural, getting into conference play. So it's almost like Auburn is right on schedule with what Bruce kind of saw, especially as you look at what's out there in the SEC. Obviously, I don't think that it's time to panic. I just think that Bruce has always been aware of what's been ahead. And it seems like now it's time to go into the tournament. Now it's time to really give meaning to this season. We've done well up to this point. You won the regular season championship in the conference, most impressive conference in college basketball this year. So you've accomplished a lot. Now I'm ready to work. I'm ready to really put belt to behind in this tournament and really go as far as we can.
Yeah.
That's and if that's how the head coach is sounding, I'm wondering if that's resonating also with the players as well, which I'm sure it is.
Yeah. I would assume that that's what they're saying in the locker room. It's like, guys, we're not unbeatable. Look, we just, like, if we want to win a championship, we need to be able to beat teams like that. And we've been able to do that before in this season. We got to get back to playing our best level of basketball as far as Cheney Johnson. Like, I've actually said this earlier in the season. I don't know that we've seen a game where Auburn has been clicking on all cylinders, where against a quality opponent, where you see Cheney Johnson being able to do what he did versus Vanderbilt, and you get Janai, because I don't know if you remember, Janai didn't have a great game versus Vanderbilt. Cheney had an amazing game, but Janai didn't have a great game versus Vanderbilt. That was also one of those games where Chad was hurt. He didn't have a great game versus Vandy. And he was in and out of the game. Simo started that game. I don't know that you've seen a game where Cheney's clicking and Miles is clicking and Tahaad is clicking and Janai, like everybody, like, unless it's been some opponent that they just absolutely overwhelm. Right? It wasn't like the better teams. That Houston game that they won early in the season, Tahaad Pettiford showed up big in that game. There were other guys who struggled in that game. So the best version of Auburn, I don't think has actually even touched a basketball court yet. So yes, there is room for growth. The question is, like, and I've said this before, are you just who you are at this point in the season? And it's never going to be a thing where all 8, 9 guys that are in the rotation are going to be clicking at the same time. I don't know the answer to that question. But there is still room for growth in this team for sure. And I said, I like the message to the team that, listen, we're relishing the opportunity to go out here and handle business.
Can Auburn finish strong in the tournament? This is something that Dustin and I talked about. And for Dustin, he felt as though getting to the Elite 8, Auburn needs to do that. And he talked about the narrative of what Auburn has been doing lately in the NCAA tournament. Obviously, we know what happened last year. I think the year where you had Jabari Smith, Walker Kessler, Auburn got bounced in the second round, field of 32 to Miami.
Right.
And that was after a very impressive regular season by Auburn as well.
So lost to Houston where they were winning that game, and Houston came back and won. So.
That was field of 32 as well, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it's been since the Final Four run that Auburn has gotten past the Sweet 16.
Mm-hmm.
So your thoughts in terms of what is a successful? Obviously, we know getting to the Final Four, winning a championship. That's been something Auburn's been talking about all season. But what is your expectations in terms of how far and how strong this team can finish?
Yeah, I mean, I think that you have to at least get out of the first weekend and get to the Sweet 16 because what has been a prevailing thing that I've seen from a lot of people who just don't like Auburn in general is Auburn's not making it out of the first weekend. They're going to get bounced the first weekend. They won't win a single game in March. Well, they've already won games in March or won a game in March versus Ole Miss. So like we can pardon my parody of Michael Jordan in his Cavs when he the shot versus the Cavs. I don't know if you've ever heard this story, but before that game, before he hit the shot, one of the reporters that was there tells a story of how Michael Jordan walked over to the reporters there, and he was like, "We took care of you in game 3, we took care of you in game 4, and we're taking care of you tonight." And these were people who had predicted.
Was it on The Last Dance?
I don't
was that told in The Last
Dance? The Last Dance, but I've heard him tell that story multiple times.
I feel like I've heard this story too.
But basically, he was telling the reporters, he's like, "You guys predicted we would get swept. You guys said we were going to lose in 4, and you said we were going to lose in 5. So I took care of y'all already. We're taking care of you tonight." So Auburn's already scratched the "you won't win a game in March" people off, right? They won a game versus Ole Miss in the SEC tournament. Everybody said they wouldn't win a single game in March. Boom. All right, you're out of here. Next is the group of people who say they won't make it out of the first weekend. This is just what Auburn does. They're going to go in here and they're going to lose in the first round. So they get to scratch some people off the list in that first game, hopefully. And then you got to get out of the first round and get out of the first weekend. You scratch those people off, right? And then after you get to that point, I think you're kind of playing with house money a little bit as far as what your expectations are. And it raises to, can you get to San Antonio, right? Can you get out of that second weekend? And for me, Auburn should 100% get out of the first weekend. If you don't, then now we have to start talking about collapse and failure, because there's just no reason why you should lose either of those games. I don't care who you're matched up with. Getting out of that second weekend is tough, because that's when you're going to get into some of the better teams, unless you get some Cinderella that made it through and you get an opportunity to play a lower seeded team that's just kind of on a heater right then.
You're gonna run
But
it.
for
You're gonna run into a potential SEC team again.
right.
Houston, Iowa State, one of those teams.
So for me, a loss in the round of 8 would not be disappointing. It wouldn't be like, yeah, this team just underachieved. It would be disappointing. It wouldn't be an underachievement for me. But I think that this team, in how good they've been all season, needs to make a Final Four. Like I don't know that you can look at a team that has been historically good on this kind of run. It doesn't make a Final Four as a team that didn't underachieve. So Elite Eight will get you to a place where you're like, okay, that was good, but not great. I think you get into the level of greatness if you make a Final Four. And so that's what I'm expecting this team to do, is make a Final Four run.
You talked about dad bods earlier. When we shouted out the Rogue Shop. When we shouted out our show sponsor. I definitely have one of those right now, and I'm working on that. So I think about food all the time. I'm thinking about food right now because I have an analogy. You remember when we were kids, and all we wanted to eat was ice cream and cookies. Mom said, "You need to eat your vegetables, right? Eat your vegetables." Okay, we're gonna eat our vegetables. Then you need to eat your protein, right? Mama cooked the nice home cooked meal. Then you eat those things. We'll talk about dessert. Obviously, we won a championship. Auburn wants to get to the Final Four. Auburn, to your point, needs to get out of this first weekend.
Yeah.
We don't talk to me about Final Four unless you can prove you can get out of the first weekend. Then comes the meat. Then comes the hard part, because you're going to run into a potential St. John's. You're going to run into one of those teams that's been in the top 10 or hovering around the top 10 all season long, but because they play in a small conference, they haven't been getting a lot of the attention that the teams in the SEC, Big Ten have been getting, right? The Dukes and the ACC, those teams, right? You're going to run into some of those teams in the second weekend. And again, this is as far as Auburn has been in over 5 years. So obviously, you've put the narrative to bed that you're an early team, you're an early exit team in the tournament. So already you've taken care of business from that vantage point. To your point, this team has done so well all season. No one has been talking about Auburn as a Sweet 16 team. It's been Final Four a bust at times, because Auburn was 2 games ahead of the next best team in all of college basketball, because Auburn had what 2 losses for the longest of time. Auburn has to, once they get out of that first weekend, get to the Elite Eight. You get to the Elite Eight, you're gonna play a game kind of like what you've played in the SEC tournament. You're probably gonna face a matchup, a battle like it was against Tennessee, a team like in Alabama, right? You're gonna face one of those teams. This is an opportunity for you to prove that, hey, we'll lose games, but we're not losing anymore. Getting to the Final Four, obviously, you don't want to just get there. You want to get to the championship game, and you're probably going to play a really good opponent in the Final Four championship game. We know how that went when Auburn went last year. Virginia double dribbled. Auburn should have been in the championship game, but this is a great opportunity for some vindication. I think if Auburn takes care of what's ahead of them, because that's my point, Ike. Auburn finished strong last year, got bounced in the first round. Take care of business. Take care of business. Everyone do their part. Everyone understands that this is bigger than them. Do their part, play their game, take care of who's in front of you. Get out of the first weekend, then you work on the second weekend. Get to San Antonio. None of that matters if you don't take care of business this upcoming weekend, as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, you've got it. First things first, right? Because this is a win in advance tournament. You don't get a redo. You don't get a, man, we had a bad game. Go out there and handle business. Point blank, period. I don't care if you win the game at the buzzer. Just go win it. I literally do not care how you look in winning that game, because every single game is a new opportunity to go and do something else. Just go win.
Yeah, I agree. And in terms of and your thoughts are, this team has to get out of, obviously Auburn has to get out of the first round. Sweet 16. If Auburn only is this season a disappointment if Auburn doesn't get to the Elite Eight?
I think disappointment for me will be how they lose that game, right? Like if it is just like a team shooting out of their mind and it's like, man, what are you supposed to do in this situation? Then no, I wouldn't be disappointed. But if it's we missed 12 free throws in that game and you lose the game by 3 or something like that, yeah, I'm gonna be disappointed. Like how you get bounced is gonna like really determine that for me.
Okay. I'm just trying to see what's Auburn's floor. We know what Auburn's ceiling is. What's the floor? And I'm thinking it's Sweet 16.
I think Elite 8 is the floor for me. Like
okay.
Yeah, I mean, like when I look at I had this.
So it's Elite 8 championship.
Yeah.
Auburn needs to be somewhere in there.
I think so, man. I think when you get to that next round, you're gonna be if you're the number 1 seed, you're playing in Lexington and Atlanta. Like you're gonna be at a quasi home game in that round of 16 game.
Yeah.
You should win that first one. I really don't care who you're playing, right? Like that game would be Missouri is in right now in that bracket. Kentucky is in that bracket, Sweet 16. It's some tough teams there, man. I ain't gonna hold you. Like it's there are some tough teams that you could potentially face when you get there. But round of 16 game would be Oregon, Liberty, Arizona, and Akron. Of those teams, I think Arizona's probably the best team.
Mm-hmm.
They're the 4 seed in there, so they're expected to move on if you just go chalk out of that, and that's who the Sweet 16 matchup would be for Auburn. But a team that stylistically Auburn should be able to beat. So yeah, I think you got to get to the Elite 8, man.
Okay.
I think you got to get to the Elite 8.
Okay. We will see, man. I tend to agree. I think this is the team that is Final Four. This is the Final Four team. I just want this team. My argument, Ike, is I think none of that matters.
Yeah.
If Auburn has a lapse, if they have a game where someone gets to Chad Baker and then he he gets ejected for whatever reason. Like if Auburn just shoots horribly, if Auburn just, you know what I mean? If there's a lot of turnovers, if Auburn doesn't if Auburn doesn't look like or play their game and gets bounced, like because they're not taking care of business, which I don't think that will happen, but I just need this team to handle what's in front of them and just get to weekend 2. Then we can talk about Elite 8. We can talk about getting, because I think your goals are still in front of you. You don't want your goals off the table. Take care of what's in front of you. So that's my biggest thing with this team, because again, these guys have come back. Janai has come back. They came back to get to the Final Four. They came back to finish business. There was unfinished business last year when you got bounced in the first round. This is a great opportunity. You saw that a lot with the Purdue team last year who went to the national championship game.
Yeah,
that Purdue team got bounced the year prior, early in the tournament.
Right.
They came back to finish the job. This Auburn team needs to have that same mentality and get back there.
Agreed 100%.
Let's get to some of y'all's comments and see what y'all are talking about here. I don't know if we started any more comments, Ike, but I'm going to grab Ben Bloodworth says, I don't like anybody in a position of power using that position to choose to be a jerk to someone. Love Pearl, but didn't like that response at all.
I don't think I even consider it being a jerk. Like he was dismissive. But yeah, I mean, I guess, perception is reality. If you feel like he was being a jerk, then fine. I love the response. I'm on the complete opposite side of that. Like, to me, it felt like
I don't know what we're supposed to say. What are you supposed to say to that?
Yeah, to me, it felt like a situation of like, of course not. Of course I'm not. Like you gave me a very easy question to ask. No, I'm not panicked at all. I can't wait. So I guess sarcasm in the moment felt very jerkish, but I'm like, hey, man. Yes, he could have answered that question in a different way. I have no problem with the way he answered it, though. But again, I don't get to tell other people how to feel about something. So you are well within your purview to have that sort of response to it.
Yeah. All right. I think there's been a lot of back and forth in the chat. I haven't seen anything else that was of. Grab this one here. AU alum 94 says Janai will be Janai. I'm confident in that moving forward. What wins the tourney is Chad Baker Mazzara, Cheney, Tahaad finding their rhythm back, and Miles being solid as he has been. Thoughts on that?
No, I agree. If I look at X factors for Auburn, Janai Broome is as dominant as he can be is not the X factor, right? Because I don't think Janai Broome by himself is going to be able to win a game from Auburn because he doesn't shoot free throws well enough, right? If he was a better free throw shooter, he can single-handedly win games for you because at that point in time, you can give him the ball, and if they don't double him, he's going to score or get fouled 9 times out of 10, right? Against most defensive big men in the country, 9 times out of 10, Janai Broome scoring or getting fouled, right? If they're calling it correctly, because he doesn't get the whistle that he needs to as a National Player of the Year candidate. But that's going to happen a lot for him. I think it's going to happen more in the tournament for him. If he shot free throws better, then you can just say, all right, good night. We're just going to punish you with Janai Broome over and over and over again. But because that's not going to be the case, most teams are not going to single cover him. You have to have good games from these other guys. So when Janai comes off the floor, because he can't play 40 minutes a game, you need Cheney to be in there to be a quality post presence rebounder / scorer in the paint. And you need Chad Baker Mazzara and Tahaad Pettiford to have decent shooting nights so that they have multiplicity of ways that they're going to be able to score. I agree with that 100%.
I'm curious, how healthy is Denver?
Definitely not 100%. Multiple times during the game, I saw him trying to
noticeably limping.
Yeah, limping, trying to like loosen it up, stretch or whatever. Denver is definitely not 100%. He's gritting his way through this and still performing well. Like, let's be clear, he's not 100%, but he's still playing fairly well. So I don't know what percentage he is, but the answer is not 100 for sure.
Yeah, and that's the thing. I would have loved to have had a healthy Denver Jones just because of what he gives you on the defensive end. So that is something I'll be paying close attention to in this tournament as well, because he's probably going to be guarding their best perimeter player.
Right. When you talk about a game like Arizona, right, he's going to have to try to shut down a guy like Caleb Love, right? And Caleb Love is a bucket. So you need Denver Jones to be present on the floor as much as possible when you have those types of guards and wing players that you're going to be going against.
Agreed. Neil White with this comment, he says AU is 16-5 against quad 1 teams. That is absolutely amazing. 15-3 in the SEC during the regular season. This is a really good point here. When you look at how other teams have fared in quad 1 games, not as impressive. I mean, maybe the only other team may be Florida.
Florida didn't play as many quad 1 games as Auburn's resume. Again, this gets lost because of the recency of the L's that Auburn took is astounding. Not just good, it's heads and tails better than anybody else in the country. It's not even comparable. And I get it. Well, this team's playing better right now. That I can name teams that I think are playing better than Auburn right now.
Yeah.
I don't think that it's unfair to say other teams are playing better than Auburn. I think the opposite swing where people are like Auburn is terrible and they're going to lose every game they have going forward. It's like the body of work doesn't suggest this. Like it just doesn't. Like, and I don't know. If anything,
it suggests that Auburn can turn it back on because of what they've done up to this point, right?
Yeah.
So again, I think this is a great perspective here that kind of, if you're panicking, this is something to consider. Like, this is what this team has done against this type level of competition. I would like to see a lot of teams I would like to see a Duke. I would like to see a Houston play 21 quad 1 teams, and I would like to see what their record looks like. Would it be 16-5? Would it be better? Would it be worse? Like, no one has had to face what Auburn has faced in terms of quad 1 games and has done what they've done. This does suggest that, hey, this team can win against some of the best teams in the country. So again, it's why Bruce had the energy he had when he was asked that question.
Yeah.
All right. So Nina came through with the super chat. It says, was the Tennessee fan base large and loud yesterday? It seemed loud on television.
They were, but the Auburn fan base was large and loud in there as well. There was a lot of great Auburn energy in there. Shout out to the Auburn fans that made the trip. Whether if you were, especially if you were coming from the state of Alabama, where the weather was crazy, did a really great job of showing up and supporting the team when they needed that boost of energy and they went on that run. You could hear the Auburn fan base loud in that arena. But yeah, Tennessee definitely had a lot of people in there. I said this before the game. You also had a lot of like hater energy in the room because there was a lot of Bama and Florida fans waiting for that game to start. And it was kind of divided on who you wanted to cheer for in that moment. Like if who did you hate more and not want to see in the next round determined who you were cheering for in those moments. So, yeah.
I can see that. I could definitely see that. Good talk. I give people some announcements and let them know to check back with us later today.
Yes, indeed. Didn't have a lot of super chats today, but before we get into the announcements, appreciate those that did super chat. Once again, we've only got a couple of live streams available left before we hit the road to Lexington, but we do have a sponsor who is going to be matching super chat dollars to help us pay for all of our expenses as we try to travel around to cover Auburn. So if you want a super chat, they're going to be matching the super chat dollars. So make sure that you guys get in on that. Make sure you visit our show sponsor, Golden's Cast Iron, at goldenscastiron.com/WR. Code Get Your Weight Up 15% off of weights, $65 off the Kamado Grills and Fire Pits with code TWR. We will be having our watch party for the reveal of the tournament brackets. So check back in here. I think that show starts at 5. So we'll kick off our show about 10 till about 4:50 to take us right up through into that. So Green Name Gang, y'all be watching out for that. If you aren't a member, maybe someone will gift that membership to you and you'll be able to get in on all the stuff, including what we do from, breakdowns of games. Go as we get into the tournament, I'll still be bringing you guys stuff from right there at Media Row as long as the internet holds up. So make sure you get your membership active and check in with the rest of the network. Guys on the network who aren't going to be traveling will be doing stuff like watch parties during some of these games. So make sure you get tapped in with them. Up-Tempo Podcast, College Loop, and the Just a Sec Pod will be doing way more with that during the off season to preview stuff around the conference leading up into the football season. So make sure y'all tap in with all of them.
Appreciate y'all being with us, guys. As usual, do the necessary. Please share, like, subscribe to the channel. You can also find us on social media. That is Facebook, X, Instagram at The War Report. We're TW Report on TikTok. That's it for now, guys. Definitely catch you later on today. We have content throughout the week as Auburn prepares for an amazing, deep, long pause NCAA tournament run.
I was gonna pause it if you didn't, bro. I was gonna be like, where are we going with this?
I got it. Enjoy the rest of your weekend, and as always,
War Eagle.